Throughout human history, the moon has been a constant companion. Yet, it remains a profound mystery. Science has yet to explain how it formed, its unusual orbit, its distance from Earth, its density, composition, and structure. While there are several theories about the moon's origins, none of them address all of these questions. There are various theories about the moon's origin, but none solve all the mysteries. However, there is one radical idea that addresses every scientific question. The moon is a hollow, artificial structure brought here by someone else. Let's explore why, starting at the beginning. We're often taught that the moon has always been here, but there's significant debate about how it came to exist in the first place. The first theory, the capture theory, suggests the moon was a wandering object that drifted near Earth and was pulled into orbit. However, this scenario is nearly impossible. Another idea is the accretion theory, which proposes that the Earth and Moon formed together from the same dust cloud in the early solar system. If this were true, the Moon would share similar characteristics with Earth, such as having an iron core and spinning on an axis. But it doesn't. The fission hypothesis was once popular, suggesting that the early Earth spun so rapidly that a chunk of it broke off, forming the Moon. This was thought to have happened over the Pacific Ocean, but we later discovered that moon rocks are much older than the ocean floor, making this theory unlikely. The most widely accepted explanation today is the giant impact theory. According to this idea, a Mars-sized object collided with Earth, and the resulting debris formed the Moon. However, this scenario would require conditions so precise that the odds are astronomical. Recently, a new theory combines elements of these ideas. It suggests that a large object collided with Earth about 4.5 billion years ago, vaporizing much of it. This vapor formed a spinning, donut-shaped cloud called a synestia, with a moon forming at the outer edge of this structure. We still don't know how the moon was created. You might think that landing on the moon and collecting rock samples would clear up the mystery, but instead, those samples only raised more questions. On Earth, the youngest rocks are found on the surface, while older rocks lie deeper underground. This makes sense. It's how natural layering works. But on the Moon, it's the opposite. The soil on the surface is older than the rocks beneath it, and the surface rocks are older than the material below them. It's completely backwards. On Earth, this phenomenon only happens when we dig, drill, or mine, bringing older material to the surface. But on the Moon, this reversed layering is found everywhere. If the Moon were somehow hollowed out, it could explain why older rock is on top. And the anomalies don't stop there. Typical planetary structures have denser materials at their core and lighter materials closer to the surface. The surface of the Moon presents yet another anomaly. Its structure is reversed compared to what we'd expect, and no one has been able to explain why. The Moon's surface is heavily pockmarked by asteroid impacts spanning billions of years. Logically, the rocks around these impact craters should vary in age, reflecting the different times the impacts occurred. But instead, the rocks show a strange uniformity in age. Lunar dust also adds to the mystery. If it's the result of billions of years of impacts, why does its chemical composition differ so significantly from the surrounding rocks? Curiously, the Moon lacks a magnetic field, yet its rocks are highly magnetized. And then there's the issue of age. The Earth is about 4.6 billion years old, yet the oldest rocks we've found here are much younger. Moon rocks, on the other hand, are much older. Some date back to the very beginning of the solar system, and others may even predate it. Even more puzzling are the radioactive elements found on the Moon, such as uranium-236 and neptunium-237. These isotopes don't occur naturally on Earth. The only way we see them is when we create them. The Moon also has an abundance of rare metals like titanium, chromium, and zirconium, which are far less common on Earth. If the Earth and Moon formed together, why such a massive discrepancy in their composition? Notably, These metals are among the strongest and most corrosion-resistant materials known to exist, raising even more questions about the Moon's origin and nature. If you wanted to reinforce a structure, these are exactly the types of metals you would use. This kind of structural reinforcement might explain another mystery: why moon craters, regardless of their width, all seem to have the same depth. Normally, larger craters should be deeper, but it's as if there's a tough, metallic layer just beneath the Moon's surface that prevents anything from penetrating further. So, how could we test the idea that the Moon might be hollow? One way would be to measure seismic activity by intentionally colliding objects with its surface. This might sound like science fiction, but we've actually done this. During the Apollo 12 mission, after the crew returned to the command module, they intentionally crashed the lunar lander into the Moon. The result was shocking. Seismic instruments recorded the Moon ringing like a bell, reverberating for over an hour. This was surprising, especially considering the small size of the object relative to the Moon. To gather more data, NASA repeated the experiment during Apollo 13 with an even heavier object. This time, the Moon reverberated for more than 3 hours, and the vibrations reached a depth of about 20 miles. This behavior is nothing like what we see on Earth. On Earth, vibrations from impacts last only a few minutes because the planet's dense material quickly dampens the energy. Vibrations also slow down as they move deeper into Earth's denser core. But on the Moon, the opposite happened. Seismic waves sped up at a depth of around 40 miles, suggesting that the Moon's interior is far less dense and could contain large, hollow cavities. The Moon's density itself is another puzzling clue. It's about 25% the size of Earth, but only about 1% as dense, a characteristic that's difficult to explain. Could this mean the Moon isn't what it seems? If the Moon were a hollow shell, it could help explain its many anomalies. Beyond the issue of its density, the Moon has a number of unique characteristics and coincidences that we don't observe anywhere else. For starters, the Moon is more like a small planet than a typical moon. At 1/4 the size of Earth, no other object in the solar system has a moon this large in proportion to its planet. This phenomenon isn't just rare. It doesn't occur anywhere else in our solar system or in any other star system we've observed. The Moon's orbit is another mystery. It's much closer to Earth than it should be, and its path is unique. The Moon is the only celestial object ever observed to have an almost perfectly circular orbit, something we don't see elsewhere. Because of its near-perfect orbit, combined with its size and distance from Earth, the Moon appears in the sky as almost the exact same size as the Sun. This is what allows us to experience solar eclipses. Remarkably, the distance to the Sun is 400 times greater than the distance to the Moon, and the Sun's diameter is 400 times larger than the Moon's. Is this an incredible coincidence? Perhaps. But when coincidences start piling up, it may be time to reconsider what we think we know. In 1970, 2 Soviet scientists did just that. After studying these anomalies and coincidences, they proposed a theory that was both bold and unconventional. They concluded that not only is the Moon hollow, but it is also an ancient spacecraft that arrived here long ago. While they acknowledged how far-fetched it sounded, they believed this was the only logical explanation. So now the question becomes, who built the Moon? Nearly every ancient culture on Earth has myths and stories about the Moon. But the further back in history we go, the fewer moon stories exist. In fact, if we go back far enough, some ancient accounts speak of a time before the Moon was in the sky. Roman and Greek writers from the 5th century BCE describe a group called the Proselenes, who lived in Arcadia. They claim to have been around since a time before the Moon existed in the heavens. Halfway around the world, the ancient culture of Tiwanaku in Bolivia also speaks of an era before the Moon arrived. According to their traditions, the Moon appeared between 11,500 and 13,000 years ago. These ancient accounts raise intriguing questions. Could the moon have arrived in Earth's orbit in humanity's distant past? If so, who or what brought it here, and why? Now, turning to Africa, Zulu legends tell an intriguing tale. They believe the moon is hollow and inhabited by an intelligent race of reptilian extraterrestrials. That's right, lizard people. According to Zulu tradition, the moon was placed into orbit by two brothers who were gods. Interestingly, this legend bears striking similarities to the beliefs of the ancient Sumerians. The Sumerians also spoke of two brother gods, Enki and Enlil, who were part of the Anunnaki, the extraterrestrial beings said to have created mankind. The connections don't stop there. The Zulu legends also describe a world before the moon arrived, when Earth's climate was vastly different. They say there were no seasons, and the planet was covered by a thick blanket of water vapor, with the sun visible only as a hazy glow through the mist. Here's where it gets fascinating. The Zulu believed that when the moon was placed into orbit, this water vapor fell to Earth in a catastrophic global flood. This story mirrors flood myths found in countless ancient cultures worldwide, and modern science has uncovered mounting evidence of such a flood during the Younger Dryas period, further linking these legends to real events. The arrival of the moon, according to Zulu mythology, changed the tides and stabilized Earth's climate. Science now confirms that the moon's gravity plays a critical role in maintaining the Earth's axial tilt, giving us consistent seasons, tides, and a climate that supports life. Without the moon, Earth's weather would be far more extreme, and life as we know it would struggle to thrive. What's even more remarkable is that the Zulu made this connection long before modern science understood the relationship between the moon, tides, and seasons. When you consider these myths and legends alongside the moon's many scientific anomalies, a compelling theory emerges. The moon is hollow, artificial, and was intentionally placed in orbit by an intelligent civilization long ago. But coincidences aren't proof, and myths can't stand as evidence. To make a compelling case, we need hard evidence, something observable, documented, and undeniable. So, what's been happening on the moon lately? Surprisingly, there's plenty, and the evidence is there if you know where to look. Science tells us the moon is a cold, lifeless world. It has no atmosphere, no seismic activity for millions of years, and its core is cold and inactive, unlike Earth's. Yet for a supposedly dead world, the moon seems unusually active. On March 7, 1971, a cloud of water vapor appeared on the moon, covering an area of 100 square miles. It lingered for 14 hours before dissipating. This is baffling because the moon isn't supposed to have an atmosphere, yet for those 14 hours it did. Similarly, over the last century, 6 astronomers have reported seeing a glowing mist in the Plato crater, always the same mist, always the same location. And then there are the boulder tracks. Images show boulders that have rolled across the surface of the moon, which is strange enough. But some tracks show boulders inexplicably rolling uphill, as seen in photos. Since ancient times, astronomers, including Aristotle, have observed strange lights appearing on the moon's surface, visible even to the naked eye. NASA documented 570 instances of these unexplained light flashes between 1540 and 1967. And sightings continue to this day. One of the most notable examples is the Aristarchus crater. In 1992, it was photographed emitting a glowing blue light, now known as the Blue Gem. Earth-based telescopes have observed this anomaly repeatedly over the years. Some speculate it could be a fusion reactor. These recurring events, mists, lights, and other phenomena, are so frequent they've been classified as transient lunar phenomena, or TLPs. But it gets even stranger. There are countless photographs of what appear to be artificial structures on the moon, towers stretching miles high, pyramids, and symmetrical formations. These have been captured by astronomers, robotic probes, and even the Apollo astronauts themselves. Perhaps the most unsettling question of all: why haven't we returned to the moon? One potential clue comes from Sergeant Carl Wolf, a U.S. Air Force technician who worked on equipment processing lunar satellite images. Wolf claimed to have seen photos showing artificial structures on the Moon, what he described as a base. Another technician corroborated his account. Wolf wasn't a conspiracy theorist or UFO enthusiast. He was simply a tech who expected NASA to explain the images. To his surprise, the photos never appeared in any public release. In an early NASA image release, some photos did show massive, towering structures on the Moon. These objects were so large they cast shadows. But those photos, according to Wolf, mysteriously vanished. And then there's the Apollo 11 mission. Shortly after landing on the Moon, the crew reported witnessing something that visibly shook them. Watch their press conference upon returning to Earth. These men, who had just made history, didn't look triumphant or exhilarated. Instead, they appeared somber, uneasy, even frightened. Could there be a reason we haven't returned to the Moon? Could it be that the Apollo missions uncovered something ancient cultures had known for centuries? Something that modern scientists are beginning to consider as the only explanation for the Moon's many mysteries? What if the Moon isn't what it seems, or what we've been told? What if the Moon is hollow, artificially constructed, and arrived in Earth's orbit from somewhere far away? Makes sense to me. Does it make sense to you? So, what can science explain about the hollow moon or spaceship theory? Let's break it down. The formation of the Moon? Still unknown. That's a point for the hollow moon theory. The density problem? Scientists say it's because the Moon was formed from Earth's upper mantle after a giant impact. The mantle is less dense than the Earth's core. Fair enough, except the giant impact theory might not even be true. What about the newer theory, where the Earth and Moon formed from a big, spinning donut shape of vaporized rock? While intriguing, it doesn't solve the density issue either. And the Moon ringing like a bell? Science attributes this to the Moon's lower density and its rock containing far less water than Earth's, which allows vibrations to reverberate longer and deeper. This explanation can't be definitively proven, but okay, it's something. Now, the perfect eclipses. Here's where science takes a win. Eclipses aren't exactly perfect, just very close. And the Moon is slowly drifting away from Earth each year, meaning eclipses are becoming less precise over time. Whether the Moon arrived 14,000 years ago or billions of years ago, it would have been much closer to Earth initially, appearing larger in the sky. Finally, what about the claim that the Moon is not hollow? NASA says seismic observations prove this. Fair point, NASA. But let's be honest, this is still conjecture. The truth is, we don't even fully understand what's at the center of the Earth, let alone the center of the Moon, if there's anything there at all. For now, the so-called structures are dismissed as shadows or optical illusions, and the mysterious lights are attributed to meteor impacts or reflections from glassy patches on the surface. Skeptics will say these explanations suffice. Many of the anomalies on the Moon do have plausible explanations. Sure, those explanations aren't perfect, but they're enough to quiet most doubts. And let's not forget, space agencies and the governments behind them are notoriously selective about the information and images they release to the public. Myths and legends are not proof, but the Moon's mysteries demand answers. To NASA, the ESA, SpaceX, and anyone capable of exploring the Moon, I have one message: prove us wrong.